Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar today titled Using CK-12 Science Resources to Increase Student Engagement. My name is Sonia, and I'm the Physics Content Manager at CK-12. And I'm also joined with Lauren, who's the Biology Content Manager, and Heather, who's actually the Science Content Manager, and she also helps to manage the chemistry content. And we all were previously science teachers, so we're really excited to be here with you today and share some ideas we have for using our resources. So just quickly, an overview of kind of our core content and an outline of what we're going to present today. We're really going to focus on our science content and showing you everything we have. We have many resources for a variety of branches across the sciences. And as I mentioned before, we all were classroom teachers, so we are going to try to share as many implementation strategies and teaching strategies with you that we can think of and share with you. And we also have really exciting news. We have a wide variety of new interactives released for biology, chemistry, physical science. We're going to demo a few of those, and we have a long list where you can access these new interactives. They're embedded and live on our site. So I think you'll be really excited about this new release. And then we're also going to kind of show you some of our assessments, our adaptive practice reports, and talk about a few of our new features. We have a Flexi chatbot and some teacher and student insights to demo for you. So there's a lot of new and exciting things on CK-12 and throughout our science content that we will be sharing with you today. And again, thank you for your time, and we'll get started. One quick thing, I'm sure you're all really familiar with Zoom by now, many Zoom calls, you've probably been on many today, just as I have. A few things, the way that we're going to use Zoom in this webinar to interact with you is we're going to have kind of two separate windows. We're going to have a Q&A. We're going to use the Q&A button just for questions. So if you have any specific questions, make sure to use the Q&A specifically for your questions. And then we're going to use the chat window just as you are now. I see a lot of you are saying hello to each other and kind of giving shout outs. So that's where you're going to have your kind of community conversation and talk to each other. And so right now, one way I'm going to kind of help distinguish between the Q&A and the chat is this. We're going to post a tiny URL, this tiny URL here with that list of all our new science interactives in the chat window. So that's going to help you distinguish between the Q&A and the chat. And there will be a list of all the interactives as well as two surveys, one for teachers and one for students. And we're really excited to have an audience of science teachers here today to hopefully give us some feedback. Try out these new interactives, let us know how they go, and then please let us know if you have ideas for improvement or if it went really well. We love to hear it. And also if there maybe were some, like I said, areas where they can be improved. We love to hear from you and partner with you and your students too. So both the surveys and the list of the new interactives are in that spreadsheet or in that Google Doc, I believe it is. And we'll come back to that a few times, but I thought I'd start with that because it is really exciting. So that's there for you in the chat. Okay, and as always, we're going to keep it very simple. Everything that I talk about, Lauren and Heather as well, can be found at www.ck12.org, our homepage. So right now I am going to actually hop on live to the site. So let me go ahead and switch my screen here. So right now, all of you are looking at the CK-12 homepage. As I always say, there's no place like home. And I'm going to kind of show you, there's many ways to navigate this page. There's no right way or wrong way, but I'm going to show you kind of the way that I choose to go and access the science content. So through this toolbar up here, I click on subjects, and here you can see under science, CK-12 offers a variety of subjects, but today we're focused on science. So here there's all of the different branches of science subjects we offer content for. Briefly, I want to highlight that we have a bank of K-5 science FlexBooks. And you can see cute little puppy dog, looks like my golden. These books are limited. So the core of our science content is focused on middle and high school, but you will kind of find a few books that can be easily customized for the K-5 levels. So these books, as you can see here, I'll click on one, have a few chapters, but again, our platform is very easy to add to and customize. So if you are a K-5 teacher, I encourage you to hop on the K-5 FlexBook page and browse and know that it's very easy to customize those books. Now, because I'm the physics content manager, I'm going to start with physics. And I know all you physics teachers out there are smiling because no one ever starts with physics, right? So why don't we click on physics? And basically, what I want to highlight and what's really nice about the CK-12 platform is that this is a FlexBook, and although I'm looking at the interactive physics for high school, the structure of the books and the lessons are the same throughout all the science content. So although we're looking at our content through the lens of physics, you'll find kind of the same structure and way to access the content if you click on biology, chemistry, earth science, etc. So this still applies to you even though you're not a physics teacher. So as I mentioned before, we call this a FlexBook 2.0, and it really kind of models that traditional table of contents where you have chapters. In this book, there's 20 chapters, and every chapter has about 5 to 10 lessons. So if we click just to kind of get you familiar with our table of contents, you can see it's very reflective of that traditional kind of textbook. And the table of contents, as hopefully you know, can be easily customized, and there's a variety of webinars about how to customize this. But if we're just accessing it as is, I'm going to click on my favorite topic to teach, Newton's laws of motion, and I'm going to click on the concept of weight. And that's important to note here, is that our lessons are broken up by concept. So they're very focused on bite-sized pieces and many ways of learning the concept of weight. So let's take a look at what that means. Here I clicked on the concept of weight, and as I mentioned, CK-12 is all about learning like multimodal ways of learning. So here we have a study guide. This is kind of a real world application, a simulation, a video. This is a Plicks. I'll show you that more, but it's an interactive. And then a TED Ed video, all on the topic of weight. And then there is also a start button, which launches you into the lesson. So what I'd like to note here is you can access each of these pieces individually here, but they are all sewn together really nicely in the lesson. So let's look at what that looks like. And click start. And here is the lesson of weight. And as I mentioned before, all of our CK-12 lessons, science lessons, look very similar to this. So you'll always have kind of a fun, compelling image to open the lesson, and then a little blurb to kind of hook the student, ask them compelling questions, make those real world connections, all of those pieces that enhance the student experience, engage the student, and kind of hone in on those good teaching practices. A little bit of content is introduced regarding the concept of weight and the difference between mass and weight. And then here's where it gets really fun. And as I said, okay, the table of contents might reflect, your traditional textbook, but this is where we differ greatly. You have this really cool simulation embedded right in the lesson. And it has this compelling question: how much weight could you lift on the moon? What's really cool is you can launch the simulation from right within the lesson. So here I'm going to launch the simulation, and now I'm dropped into this opening video where it kind of poses a series of questions, and it puts me into this setting of an astronaut training chamber. If I toggle forward, I'm now in the interactive sandbox. And we call it a sandbox really because it's meant just as a playground sandbox is, to jump in and play around. And the structure of the simulations, and just to mention, we have over 90 simulations, and they all look just like this, and they have this same structure. So there'll always be almost one or two sliders, and you can adjust them. And then basically the animations and the graphs change accordingly. So as you can see, I put my little astronaut on Mars, the background animation changed. And then you'll see that a line graph appears. One thing I'd like you to note is that all of our simulations, the graphs, the variables, they're all mathematically accurate. So if you would actually want to utilize this graph in your classroom, you can actually derive from the graph of a line the equation F equals mg. And if you solve for g using these numbers, you'll actually derive the gravitational constant on Mars. So it's this really kind of fun, engaging way to teach about gravity and the difference between weight and mass. Now, if we continue on, there are some slider-based questions. So these actually prompt the students on how to interact with the sandbox and see if their understanding is correct or not. And then kind of assess their understanding. And then lastly, and this is something I just really want to share with you all, especially because the topic of our webinar is using these resources to engage your students. At the end of every simulation, and as I mentioned, we have over 90, there's 4 more real world questions with really compelling real world examples with really compelling questions. So this one are, why are volcanoes on Mars so tall, right? So I really encourage you, I know for myself, when I was a teacher, coming up with really good, big questions was challenging. So really we have a bank of hundreds of really good questions with really interesting animations. And I could imagine at the end of this simulation saying, pick a real world example and investigate it, do some research, come back with something to share with your students as a homework assignment. I just quickly did that, so I'm gonna kind of go back to where I was because that was cool what I just did. So here I was in this real world example, okay? And I'm in the simulation. And with one click, I just want you to know there's 4 arrows, or you could press the escape as I did. You're dropped right back into the lesson. So that's kind of this really nice way to keep the student focused on what you were intending them to learn rather than getting lost down this loophole of different links and so on and so forth. So now that I'm back on the lesson, you can see here I have some example problems of how to use that equation that I just derived or explored in the simulation. And then I have kind of some other pathways of different concepts that connect, a summary, a review. You can highlight and take notes within the text, and Heather will mention that in her segment of the webinar. And there's even videos embedded. Here's my buddy, Derek Mueller, Veritasium, and this is a great video of the difference between mass and weight. So again, this is all accessible and embedded right in the lesson. Now, some of that content that I showed you at the beginning on the concept page, it's really nicely integrated into this lesson as well using the toolbar. So here I'm going to click on the top right-hand corner toolbar, and I'm going to hit related content. Now here are all that content, the study guide, the real world application, the simulation, so on and so forth, all accessible right here from the lesson page. One thing I wanted to note is that there are also another type of interactive we offer called Plicks, and it stands for Play, Learn, Interact, Explore. So as you saw, the simulation really launches you into this full portal where there's multiple ways of interacting with the concept of weight. The Plicks is a little simpler in that there's it's mostly like a drag and drop, or it'll be like a matching, a very easy interaction. But then what's nice is that there are 5 questions, challenge questions that provide immediate feedback to your students. And they kind of increase in difficulty. So the student can actually, again, check out, are they getting this right? And really engage in the content. So I just wanted to highlight, that's kind of the difference between simulations and Plicks. So that is all right there, just embedded into the lesson of weight, so accessible here. And then I did want to show you a few things. So There is here practice, and Heather will highlight more of the adaptive practice, but within every lesson, your students are able to access basically a set of practice problems. And it's right there within the lesson, giving them immediate feedback, and it actually adapts. So it gets harder as they answer correctly, and then it helps kind of point them to different resources if they're getting stuck. Also on the bottom left-hand corner, we have a little chatbot named Flexi, and he's there to kind of help tutor the students and answer their questions. And for you, if you're having trouble finding something on the site, Flexi is there for you as well. And basically there, I'm going to kind of hand it over to Lauren, but there's two things I'm going to, few tricks I'm going to kind of show you. So as I scroll up here, one trick I always like to leave you guys with is this. If you're ever on the site and you want to get back to the homepage, this is like my favorite trick, just hit that CK-12 icon. So basically I'm going to hit CK-12 and there's no place like home. I'm back on the homepage. And based on the one simulation, the one Plicks that I showed you, hopefully you're really excited about them and you want to see more. So the way you're going to access our whole bank of simulations and Plicks interactives is through the Explore icon on the toolbar here. I'm going to hit Explore, and this is everything CK-12 has, but here I'm going to focus on the simulations. So this is the simulations browse page. As I mentioned, we have, hundreds, 90 physics, and then a large bank, I believe, of chemistry simulations here. And they all have that same structure as I demoed with the astronaut training chamber. Although they're formally labeled physics and chemistry, I do want you to know that maybe you're an earth science teacher or a biology teacher or physical science. I do encourage you to hop on and search through, because we have such a wide variety. I really believe that you'll find something for your course or levels. So for instance, if I search moon, you could see here, maybe some of you earth science teachers out there could use the phases of the moon simulation or Newton's apple. So please hop on this browse page and check out our simulations. They're really, really, I think, engaging tools for your students. And then also, I just want to highlight that because our simulations are really geared towards physics and chemistry, I do want to note that here is our Plicks browse page that I got to through the Explore Plicks. And here we have all branches of science. So we actually have Plicks made just for earth science concepts, life science, physical science, physics, chemistry, and biology. So make sure, again, I just search usually, let's say if we search the concept of mitosis, or I think I did the moon in the last one. Let's see. Yeah, basically here, we have a wide bank of Plicks interactives, all with that simple way of engaging, kind of drag and drop the dot and the 5 questions. So I will click back to the CK-12 homepage, and I'm going to hand it off to Lauren now, who's going to walk you through biology and show you those new interactives that we just released. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Sonia. Hello, everyone. So I'm going to demonstrate some lessons and content within biology. I'm going to start from the landing page here and head over to subjects in the tab up ahead and select biology. And this is going to allow me to access the Biology Flexbook 2.0. As in physics, you'll see there is a table of content. There are 13 chapters in biology. You can expand these chapters open to explore the different concepts. There's about 327 concepts, so there's a lot to choose from. If at all you wanted to search differently, you could also go to the search bar here in the top left corner and do a search for a topic of interest. Say, for instance, you wanted to search homeostasis within this Flexbook. And different resources related to homeostasis will come up, different lessons, Plicks, various videos, study guides, etc. So just one other way you can search for your topics. I'm going to, however, go back to the table of contents from the sidebar here. Some other notable things that I would just mention in the table of contents too is chapter 13 on human biology. If you're teaching a anatomy and physiology elective, for instance, this is an extensive chapter in human biology that you may want to explore further for resources that can help you or your colleagues, teaching that elective. It has a similar setup to all of our lessons within the other concepts within biology and also in physics, including adaptive practice, embedded videos, and related content. So with that, I am going to enter into one of our lessons within biology from chapter 1, our organization of living things. And this will bring you to the start page. As Sonia said too, this is just showing you other ways to learn that can include, say, a Plicks, a real-world application, videos, sometimes study guides that you can share with your students to explore this concept further. I'm going to enter the lesson now by selecting the Start button. And you'll see a very similar setup as the physics lesson that Sonia had demonstrated too. We always start with a real-world introduction. The content follows with some great visuals and videos embedded into it that your students can access directly in the lesson. And it ends with a summary and a review set of questions. In the top right corner here is our toolbar. This is where you can access the related content. So those other ways to learn that we just saw in the start page can also be accessed directly from the lesson itself, those Plickses, the real world application and videos that may be available for that concept. You'll also notice in the top right here, this insights icon that you can actually find information about how your students are doing. Heather's going to go into more detail about this later. Just wanted to point that out though. This is where you can access it from the lesson. So for instance, if you're assigned, say, an adaptive practice to the student, you may be able to see individually how that student is doing, or this class as a whole, how they are doing within that concept. The view practice here is the adaptive practice in the bottom right corner that your students can use directly from the lesson to practice various questions within this concept and test their knowledge. If they're struggling a bit, recommendations and feedback is given to the students for them to maybe explore resources to brush up on that particular topic. Another item in the bottom left here is our Flexi Tutor. This is something also Heather will go into more detail about. Just want to show you how it looks in the lesson directly. And this is a great way to help students on their learning journey, providing notifications and options to ask questions while they're in a lesson that maybe you've assigned or that they're independently exploring on their own. However, something new to some of our biology lessons include embedded interactives. These are different from the Plicks that Sonia showed you in the Physics Flexbook 2.0. You can find these new interactives in some of our lessons in biology, but they're also found in some of our chemistry and physical science Flexbook 2.0 lessons as well. Types of interactivity you may find include, for example, matching exercises, highlight and click visuals, slider animations, and label drag and drop exercises. So I was going to walk through a few of those examples in the lessons from biology, and I'm going to start with the organization of living things. This lesson has some great examples of our slider animations. So I scroll down here and I'll find a animation here, slider animation on the organization of levels in a multicellular organism within the human body. And students can really just use this slider to explore these terms further with these visuals, to compare and contrast the terms. A great follow-up exercise is to maybe come up with an alternative organ system in the human body on their own to help reinforce this hierarchy in the living body of the human body. And also another hierarchy within this lesson, the levels of organization in nature, is also in this form of this slider animation interactive. You can go from organism, from population, community, and all the way to biosphere. So a great way for students to also explore this a little further, get familiar with these terms, and also maybe come up with their own examples of maybe populations, communities, ecosystems, and biomes that may exist elsewhere. I'm going to show you another lesson in biology that has some more of these interactives. Another example is our prokaryotic and eukaryotic cell lesson in chapter 2. So I'm going to access that lesson from our sidebar here, the table of contents. I'm going to select that and find chapter 2 and our lesson in prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. And this lesson has some great highlight and click interactivity built into it. This one here, as you scroll down, we'll see first a eukaryotic cell where students can select different buttons here of the different cellular structures to see where they are in the eukaryotic cell. It's defined for them so that they can actually become a little more familiar with this set of cellular structures in eukaryotic cells within the lesson itself. As I scroll down further, there's another highlight and click interactive where they're comparing 3 different cells, bacteria, animal, and plants, so our prokaryotes and our eukaryotic cells, and they can really start to see and build a sense of what structures are common among all 3 of these cells and what structures maybe are unique to our eukaryote. So as they select the different cellular structures at the top, they can find where those are. They will highlight within the different visuals here. And so this is a great way for students to make sense of this. You could have them provide some evidence where they actually are taking screenshots, providing evidence of what they are seeing here in terms of what's similar and different. And then post to your online page, whatever that might be. Another great lesson that I wanted to show you is our cellular respiration lesson. This has a great example of our label drag and drop lesson. So I was going to show you that example now. To access that, I'll use the search bar again. So I'll search cellular respiration. And the lesson for cellular respiration, I will select from the sidebar here of our results. And as I scroll down, I'll find that label drag and drop interactive that allows the students to explore this process further with the inputs and outputs. And so they would just be using the buttons here to drag and drop. And basically along the way, they can check for feedback or whether or not they are getting the process correct and keep trying. Those that are correct will stay. So this is a great way for students that might be struggling with this or need this concept broken down a little further to check their work. And again, a great way for you to see visually what they're doing is really maybe even doing this as a whole class. If they're doing it independently, they could even, again, take some screenshots and post to your online page to share how they're doing and maybe what they got wrong and where their questions are. Another lesson, and this is going to be the final lesson I show you, is a matching exercise in our chapter 6, ecology. I'm going to access it from the toolbar here, the table of contents. And this is on symbiosis. So maybe you have already been through symbiosis in your class this year, or maybe you're going to get to it later. Has some great examples within the lesson itself. And then it ends with a really nice way for students to check their understanding and compare and contrast the different types of a symbiosis that exists, getting feedback along the way. So this is another example that can be utilized within our lessons directly. So this is really just, again, a few examples. I'm going to show you the list of lessons from our Google Doc here that we're going to share with you in the chat now that have the biology and chemistry and physical science lessons that have these interactives embedded into them. And really your feedback is very much welcome. If you select one or more of these lessons that are included in this list and even share it with your students, any feedback using our teacher and student feedback forms that are here would be greatly appreciated. They will take a few minutes to complete, and really just getting a sense of how you're using them in your classroom and what you think about them and how you might improve, or what you did even like about them is just wonderful feedback that we would love to hear. All right, well, this is a good time for me to hand things off to another science content team member at CK-12, Heather, who leads the chemistry content and product development in science. And she's going to walk through some features that are throughout the science content that we have. So Heather, whenever you're ready.
Thanks, Lauren. All right, so I'm going to just go through some of the features that are across all of our different science courses, both middle school and high school. And the first feature is our adaptive practice and quizzes. And these are within every lesson. They're on the bottom right. You'll see a button that says practice, and that takes the student to the adaptive practice, which consists of 10 questions on that topic. And the questions get progressively harder as the student goes through them. And the goal being that the student reaches a level of mastery. And so students can redo questions until they reach 10 questions correct. So that's how the adaptive practice component works. If you want to create your own questions to attach to a lesson in place of adaptive practice, you can also create a quiz from the questions we already have started. So you can pick from our questions and create your own as well and add those in. So however you choose to do that. And then the quiz would replace the adaptive practice at the end of a given lesson. So those are two good ways to check your students' understanding. And all of these, we have insights now within our lessons. So all of those will show up in the insights to show you how your students are progressing throughout, is based on adaptive practice. All right, so the next thing is our annotation tools, and these are basically a highlighter and annotating that students can use throughout the reading. And these are really helpful for helping your students to practice reading and note-taking skills and really engage with the content as they read. The next one, here are insights, which I hinted at a little bit previously. And these are helpful for you to see how a student is progressing through a lesson, especially when you're remote, as we all are right now, really trying to see how is that student's learning experience when you can't see them in the classroom. And so what's cool about this is you can see things like on the left side of this lesson, you see a graph, and that's showing you where the student is most engaged as they're going through that lesson. So that their engagement is based on things like the time they're spending on something, whether or not they're clicking on it, highlighting it, responding to questions, and so on. Do they watch the video, things like that. And so you can see that engagement. You can see if your kids read the first paragraph and then didn't do any of their reading, you're going to see an immediate drop off, right? So it's really helpful in seeing what your students are doing. Also, you can see things like how much time they're spending on the lesson, as well as how well they did on the adaptive practice and their proficiency levels would be that middle thing. And the engagement just also gives you an overview, like the graph on the side, of how actively engaged they are in the reading and learning experience. And then our system also will provide recommendations of other materials that we have on our site that might be helpful for students that struggled on this lesson and things like that. So those pop up on the right. Then another tool we have that's really helpful for teachers is our report system. And basically it allows you to see if students are completing their work. If it's a completion-based activity or assignment, they'll have a check mark. Otherwise, it'll put a percentage of accuracy so you can see how your students are performing across the given lessons and assignments. You can also click on individual students to get more details as to their skill level and what areas they're struggling in. Then a awesome feature of our FlexBooks is that they are all easily translatable. So if you scroll to the bottom of any given text FlexBook, there is a button. It's a little hard to see, but if you look where you see the icons for LinkedIn and Twitter and those things. Right above that, there's a button there that says select language, and you can switch the language of the textbook. So it's a really great tool if you have ELL students in your classroom. And this can also be really helpful for parents as well. So this is a good thing to point out to them. And the last thing I think I have is we also have the option of downloading your FlexBook and or FlexBook lessons, as well as worksheets of adapted practice. So especially if your students have IEPs and they require printed off versions, you can easily do this by clicking on the icon or button, sorry, that says choose, that is located on our FlexBook title page, and then you can download a PDF version of that book. Similarly, when you click on the adapted practice, it will also give you the option when you assign it to download worksheets. Yeah, and so we can now do Q&A, but I don't see any open questions at the moment.
Heather, I can I had a few questions about downloading the answer keys from within the FlexBooks, like where they can access answer keys, and also assigning content. So I don't know if you would like to share your screen and hop on and demo that, or I can do that as well. Let's see.
Yeah, and sorry, I don't have it up. Might be faster. I apologize if you want to demo it.
Okay.
In terms of that, while she's getting those two questions up, I will go ahead and answer. There's another thing to note with translations is we do offer some books that were written in Spanish, particularly for where we had human translators come in and translate all of that content. So if you are teaching an ELL class, particularly, and you're looking for those resources, we are happy to guide you to those as well.
Okay, I think I fixed the problem. And can you see my my screen, and it's on the CK-12 homepage?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, thank you. We had a few tech issues there, but we are back live on the homepage. So why don't I hop in and answer a few questions, and then Heather, if you see any, or Lauren on the Q&A. And we just want to assure you that we will answer all your questions, but I'm going to answer these two and then kind of wrap things up for the sake of time here. So why don't I kind of access I'll do the chemistry book. And so here's our chemistry FlexBook, since we hadn't demoed that. And basically the answer keys for all review questions in the lesson. So here I'm going to hit chapter 2, lesson 2.1. So all of the answer keys, and when I say answer keys, what they are answer keys for are these review questions at the end of every lesson. So here you could see there's 4 review questions. And there are, let's say, 10 lessons in chapter 2. In the first lesson of every chapter, so here's chapter 2.1. Let me just kind of scroll up here. 2.1, you have both the PDF and there should be a doc as well of the answer keys for this lesson. So I believe there was a question there. So again, the first lesson in every chapter throughout all our science books have answer keys. And there are no teacher editions currently for these FlexBooks. But the answer keys for the review questions are included there. The other question that I had was about assigning content, I believe. So quickly, I'll open up a physical science book since I haven't demoed that. And let's go to atomic structure and the atoms. So now you're pretty familiar with how a lesson looks. And right here at the top, you can see a banner that it says to assign to our class. You're also going to find this assign button. Let's say if you're in a simulation, a Plicks, or any of our content on its own, look for the assign button basically. And I'm going to click it, and I'll show you that we try to really integrate with these different learning management systems very nicely. So you can use our CK-12 learning learning management system, Google Classroom, Canvas, Schoology, and a variety of others. So very easily you can choose how you'd like to assign this particular lesson with your students. So I just wanted to highlight that. I don't know if Heather or Lauren, if there's any other questions, but at this point, while we are looking at more questions, I'm just going to wrap up the webinar so that you feel free to leave, but know that if you do have more questions, we are going to stay on until all of those are answered in the Q&A. So if you do have to drop off, I know we're it's about 4:10 right now. Please know that we have a help center available anytime. We have a great support person, and we just want to hear your questions and support you. So please check out ck12.org/help. And there's a lot of great little videos and tutorials to help you with our content. Also, if you enjoyed these webinars, we have a great outbound team, and they run a certified educator program. And I encourage you to go to ck12.org/certified and look into how you can get that badge of certification and become really a champion CK-12 user. There's so many great resources, all for free, and they work on any device. I also saw that in the Q&A, just to clarify, everything we showed you here works on any device, and with really launches with one click, so really accessible. So I encourage you to become a certified educator. And then we mentioned this, as you can see, we really want to engage with you. So be sure, share that doc with all your department and biology teachers, life science teachers, and get the word out that we do have really cool interactives. We've worked really hard to develop them for you and your students, and we really want to hear from you and make more and make them even better. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. And I'll end there with thank you. And as I said, we won't completely disconnect until all of your questions are answered. But for those of you who need to leave, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for using CK-12. Okay, so I'm looking at the Q&A right now. And I think they are all being answered live. So thank you all again for your time, and look forward to hopefully seeing you in our certified educator program.